Yeah, thank you, Kenton. And just at the end, we are going to take a few questions. So if you have any specific things that were unclear that came up on your mind, we understand that the global presidential primary and our organization can be a little bit puzzling sometimes, but we'll try to answer your questions as best possible and, of course, have conversations throughout the day. And I'd like to turn back now to going back in time again, for our chair and vice chair report about what happened in 2019, what worked well, what were some of our goals, where could we improve as we head into this important election year. So some of our goals for 2019, when Kenton and I, we were both elected at the end of February last year, and really, I would say, took over the position in March of 2019. And it was really our goal to make Democrats Abroad a more accessible and understandable organization. We know, just to talk a little bit about statistics, we are just over 10,000 members in Democrats Abroad. In terms of active engagement, however, we're looking at about 3 to 4% of those 10,000 members. So for us, we came in and we thought, I think both of us have seen this as an educational role. And really, if people understand who we are as an organization, I think it's a cause people can get behind, and we've really tried to let people know what we're doing, because I think we're doing some pretty cool stuff. Secondly, looking specifically at the structure of Germany, what Kenton just mentioned with our chapter and precinct structure, we were really striving to find new pockets of Americans, specifically in what we would call underserved areas. So you probably heard the 12 chapters, and we are very excited that we do have strong leadership in all of those 12 chapters. However, as we look ahead, we knew that just staying in those cities was not going to be enough if we were going to truly try to get out the vote in Germany, reach these 120,000 people. So that was one of our priorities, to get into some new areas. And kind of the overarching theme for this was also organizing for 2020. We knew that we were going to need to build leadership teams. We knew we were going to bring in new members, train new members, and get everyone energized for the work that's ahead. And why are we doing this, Kenton? Because again, we were really trying to find, retain, and mobilize the Americans living in Germany, and I would say beyond that, living abroad, with the overall goal of getting them to vote. So I wanted to talk about some things that we tried out this year to help us reach these goals. The first one being, how are we going to make ourselves more accessible, more understandable to our membership, and really try to get engagement up. So first and foremost, we've really tried to prioritize communication with our leaders at the local level. We know that even though we are a national organization, nothing's going to work unless we have people on the ground who are on board and getting the word out in their local communities. Beyond that, we took to the digital world and we started sending out a welcome letter. Some of you may have received this starting in, I believe, May. We worked in close cooperation with Susan Penrod, who deserves a very loud round of applause. So basically what happens now is if somebody, as you all did at one point, if you go to our website, democratsabroad.org, and you hit join to become a member, your information will come to us, and we will send you a letter then explaining some of the things that I'm talking about right now. So putting this just very kurz und knapp about what's our organization, how you can get involved, just so that people have this information from the start and get involved. Kenton and I also, I guess, talking about, again, reaching some of these other pockets of communities and making ourselves more accessible, more understandable, we launched an online meet and greet series. So we are trying to do 1 to 2 a month in 2020. We started, the first one was in May of 2019. And what we found, I think, that's been really interesting is we have people who come on the event who are in the most random places in Germany, who don't fall under these 12 chapters, who say, I live in a small town with, a few hundred people, but, my voice still matters. I still want to get involved. I have time. I have energy. Give me something to do. And I'm sure this applies to some of you as well. And just because there might not be an event going on in your area, or it might not make sense to do it in your little dorf, we need your help. And we've really been trying to bring people together who we previously didn't reach with these online meet and greets. So as I mentioned, we were trying to obviously reach these new pockets of Americans, again, which required close cooperation between the national and local levels of Democrats abroad. And I'm proud to say that we are having, we talk about the chapters and precincts, so we're just going to call these groups for right now. But we do have people coming together in all of these cities right now. I know we have a representation from Augsburg here, Jonah, taking the lead there. Really excited about that. We have Leipzig here as well, Caitlin Kennedy. I saw you walk in. Yeah, taking the lead there. Regensburg is here, Nuremberg is here, and so people are really coming together, and all it takes, honestly, is a few people with some energy, and I think we all have that this year. So let's keep bringing people together and, getting to as many cities as we possibly can. Anytime we do an event somewhere, there's someone coming to it who is learning something about Democrats abroad, who's going to tell 5 other people that they can vote from abroad, and it's really a snowball effect. So here are some pictures from this. On the left, that is the group in Leipzig, an event that Caitlin put on at the end of the year. And here we have a meet and greet. This is the Darmstadt group that is forming under the leadership of Barb Chapp, because Darmstadt currently falls under the Frankfurt chapter. But as you can see, we do have groups coming together, and I think that's really exciting. Talking about how we're going to organize for 2020, which was also one of our objectives for the past year, was to build some national teams and create an atmosphere among the national level. What you'll see here, I do say built, but it is ongoing, because there is room to join our team, to get involved. We did add some positions to our national leadership team. We now have a study abroad coordinator, Renee. I'm not sure if Renee's here yet, but you'll be hearing from Renee a little later on. Postcard coordinator with Irisita. You'll be hearing from her. Black Caucus chair and Youth Caucus chair, Courtney. So we're really excited to have these people jumping on at the national level. And also, we've been trying to build local on-the-ground teams. This doesn't fall as much on Kenton and I. We are there, obviously, to provide support, but we've really been encouraging our local chapter leaders who stood up earlier to create teams, because we know this isn't a job that one person can do alone, whether that's my position, whether that's a local leader's position. This is really a team effort. So we've tried to talk about delegating work and finding an area that works for specific volunteers. Some people might say, give me stuff to do. I want to go downtown and hand out vote for abroad flyers. And that's all I want to do. Some people might say, I want a phone bank, and I want to lead that. So we've been working together with chapter leaders to create leadership teams at the local level, so that it doesn't all fall on one person, and it's manageable, and we're getting stuff done. Yay. And here you'll see in September, we came together for a leadership retreat just outside of Cologne, and the EXCOM, which is a word you might hear today, the executive committee, those people that Kenton introduced, which is our national steering committee, we all met and talked about what we were going to do. Now we're doing it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the numbers too, and where we feel that stuff has been successful in these efforts. As I mentioned, making ourselves more accessible, understandable, reaching these new communities. And I have the statistics here from September onward. So you do see, especially, I think, as you can see from this graphic, the jump between December and January of this year is really impressive. Nearly 200 people means probably signed on to vote from abroad and hit that they wanted to also join Democrats abroad. So I would just, So we hit that 10,000 mark back in November, which we were really excited about, celebrating our 10,000th member. And I also just wanted to say, a lot of this, again, is not because of Kenton and myself. We are helping organize, but I can tell you that a lot of this falls on the chapter chairs who stood up And in particular, I'd like to recognize Barb Chapp from the Frankfurt area. Nearly every day, so what happens is whenever someone signs up for Democrats Abroad, Kent and I get these emails, and it says, so-and-so joined Democrats Abroad. So as you can imagine, we were getting a lot of these between December and January. And for several days, it was pretty much Frankfurt, and these little cities around Frankfurt. And once again, I know Barb has been making a lot of calls. I know all the chapter chairs have been making a lot of calls, and we're seeing that, and a lot of what we do is through word of mouth, and it is getting around. So thank you to all of you. So our goals for 2020, moving forward, continue getting the word out about Democrats Abroad through the actions that I've just discussed. And you can also become involved with this as well. So in your folders that you received, every person should have received a little packet of Vote From Abroad cards. In your folders, there are also some tear-off sheets. I would invite you to just stick this in your jacket pocket, and when you hear someone speaking English, as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes, oh, I wasn't eavesdropping. Pass that Vote From Abroad card along. Leave it at your restaurants. Leave it at your English shops. People see it. If you're going there, someone else is going there too. Hang up those tear-off sheets in your Rava, and it will work. So that is really one of our goals that can happen across the board, whether that's in our official positions or you going back to your community and just telling people you know. Again, we'd like to support those already on board, continue providing support to our local leaders, continue providing support to our national team, making sure that people have the resources that they need, the trainings that they need to really succeed in their positions. And again, we'd really like to develop new leaders in some of these new areas, as I mentioned, and I'm just looking out to the crowd, Caitlin in Leipzig, Jonah in Augsburg, no pressure, but we really are here to support you, and we would like to, anytime Americans come together, as I mentioned, the word's going to get out and it's going to spread, and we really like to offer you as much support as possible for the national level moving forward. And the same goes to our existing chapters. And again, why are we all here? What does all of this mean? Again, we are here with the one objective to find, retain, and mobilize Americans in Germany and get them to vote. All right. So looking at I think we're going to take a few questions right now. If there's anything confusing, big or small, whether it's about our structure or... I'm going to come to you, Barb. The price is right here.
Okay, my question is, we're setting up the global presidential primary locations, and people can go there to vote in person. Is there any other way that people can vote in the primary?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So we are going to have these in-person voting centers in 30 cities throughout Germany, but ballot is also going to become available online. So that should become available on February 18th. And if you can't make it to one of these in-person voting centers, you can go to our website, download it, and return it either via postal mail or email. So that is also an option. Good question, Mark. Thank you. All right, Janet, yes. I'm coming.
Thanks. So my question is, if you're voting in our Democratic primary here, I can still vote in my state primary? Or am I, because I'm voting twice, essentially. Is this an issue?
Good question. So to answer that, you can still vote in your state's primary, but not for president. So for example, you can request your absentee ballot. For me, in Pennsylvania, I can see who's up on the ballot for House of Representatives, for the Senate, not really Senate, but House of Representatives, some of the other state and local elections, and I can still influence those. I would just leave the line for presidential candidate blank. Mm-hmm. Go to Amber.
I might actually jump on this.
Fortunately, in Wyoming, Michigan, we have a fabulous city clerk, and they sent me my absentee ballot for voting without requesting, but I've just heard that that can be challenged. Is that correct? And what should we do about that?
Oh, here we go, great. Also a very good question. So some of the things that we hear about Democrats abroad are, well, I don't need to request my ballot, I always get it. Clerk knows, and we're on this basis. We strongly discourage that. If there's anything we've learned from the past 3 years, it's that nothing is normal. And really, if you do not resubmit that official ballot request each calendar year, your vote can be challenged. So we're really encouraging everyone to go from votefromabroad.org, send it in, and make sure that your vote's going to count in November. Specifically, I can tell you within Germany, I've heard a lot of this from voters in Michigan and Texas, where they've said stuff hasn't happened or I'm not on the roll anymore. So please check that now. And that's also the really fortunate thing about this is we can already do this in January and February. So get it out of the way, make sure things are good to go with your voter registration status and that you have your ballot request in. Thank you.
Can I still, even if I do request the ballot, can I still use the ballot that has already been sent to me? Because I've already received my California primary.
So you're saying you didn't submit a request?
Correct.
And you got it?
Yeah.
I would still send one in for the general election.
Okay, but can I still use the one that I've received?
Yes.
What about for new voters? My son will be turning 18. He's 18 now. He's never lived in the States, but he could, what can he do?
Exactly. So has your son lived in the U.S. before?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question that also comes up. Thank you for asking it. If you have an American child through birth, for example, you are American with a German spouse, and your son or daughter has dual citizenship, for example, they can vote, yes, and they should use your last residence in the United States.
Sorry, but I think there are certain states that don't allow that.
There are, but as a general rule of thumb, that's
Right.
what we suggest.
We should make sure.
It's interesting because in New York you can go online and look, and it says if you're active or not.
Right.
So and you could do that for anybody. So it pays to check. I think one point we have to emphasize is dual nationals, because a lot of dual nationals don't know. Well, first off, they don't know they have to file an F-bar, and they don't know they have to file an income tax return. But they also don't know that they are eligible to vote, or they may be eligible to vote. And I think it's important, the numbers are much higher if you go into dual nationals, and to make an effort to get them registered to vote.
Absolutely.
Two of my 3 children have never lived in the United States for any length of time. One daughter, she votes in Georgia, so that's just fine. But the other 2, the situation is I was born in New Hampshire, and my last residence was in Pennsylvania, and at the county clerk's office in Erie, Pennsylvania, they tell me my kids have to vote in the state where I was born. In New Hampshire, they tell me they have to vote in the state where I last lived. And we've gone through email correspondence, telephoning, and paper letters, and these 2 have never been able to vote.
Okay. Well, as a Pennsylvania voter, I'm going to say let's get them registered to vote. And I would say, again, this sounds like a case that would be better suited for our, we have a voter assistance team, which is people trained highly in campaign law, election law, for example, working to answer very specific questions and address situations such as yours. So if you go to our website, votefromabroad.org, there will be the address there for the help desk who you could contact with a specific situation, and they'll provide assistance as best possible. But we're happy to talk about it too. I'm sure there are some people in this room who have worked with that team who might be able to give you a little bit more guidance.
Candace, can I add something about the children who've never lived in the U.S.? There are 13 or 14 states that do not allow those children to vote. Federal law says that you have the right to vote as an American citizen in the state where you last lived. Those people don't have that state, including my 24-year-old son. But the law says that you also could be voting in a state to which you have strong ties. So both the federal government and Democrats Abroad have recommended a number of things. The first thing is, don't mention that you haven't lived in the state when you register. Every state uses the same form, but they have different instructions. If they don't ask you specifically, don't add that information in number 6 or whatever number says additional information. Just use your parents' last residence. However, if you know you're in one of those states, the voter may consider voting in another state to which they have strong ties. You can't just make up, you can't just choose, throw a dart or choose a state that has an exciting race that you want to participate in. But there are most likely states to which you have strong ties that are not among those 13 or 14. So it really is the voter's choice. The federal government agency that's concerned with overseas voting, FVAP.gov, does trainings at embassies around the world, and they've told us, volunteers that have gone in, don't mention this, just try to get registered. So I'm kind of sorry for all that correspondence that's been going on between New Hampshire and Pennsylvania. Best thing is just, to try it by giving that address, and then to be dealing, as Candace said, with our experts, or calling the county, or looking at other states to which you have strong ties, to which the voter has strong ties.
Thank you for that.
Hello. Could you talk a little bit about the Electoral College and how Democrats Abroad delegates have any power in our voting system for president?
So it's a good question, and I do know from yourself that they're working on different campaigns such as the national vote and bringing electoral college reform. We do know that this is an important issue to a lot of us within Democrats Abroad. However, at the moment we don't have any active projects that are global or national level focusing on that, but that would be an option to let's talk.
I just wanted to make one small addition. My name is Dawn. I'm from Nuremberg. And a long time ago, I was at a meeting back when my son turned 18 and wanted to vote. And somebody came up with the idea that if that child can add up all the times he visited his grandparents and say those were the months or weeks, that he lived in that state. Nobody asks then afterward. It's kind of legitimate, So that I thought that was a good thing. Somebody hasn't done this yet or has to register there. Somebody who's doing this for the first time and has dual citizenship. I think that's a tricky way. At least in Ohio it worked. Never questioned it or anything like that. And so it's like, yeah, I lived there for 2 months of my life or something like that. And that it was always it made them a little bit of a different status than. Like, do you plan on returning? And the answers are things like, I don't know, or yes, or whatever, possibly. So they can say, yeah, possibly. It's always possible. Nobody's going to check. They can't do that.
I'll give a caveat to that though, because I remember there was a guy from Wisconsin at the Nuremberg thing this summer, and he pointed out that Wisconsin, if you say, I'm going to return, guess what? You're now responsible for Wisconsin income tax.
So this is a question that does also come up a lot.
Check into that before you say that.
There are people who will come to us and say, does voting in my state and local elections have an impact on my tax status? This is a very sensitive topic, but generally I would say the answer to that is no. Okay. Voting is not going to change that. If you're in Germany and you are here working, and you have a Steuernummer, if the IRS or your state wants to fine you and have you pay taxes, they could find you whether or not you vote or not. So I would say that should not be.
Well, it wasn't whether you voted or not, it's whether you said, I intend to return when registering to vote.
Katie, I see you shaking your head. Do you have a good response to this?
It's something that people are really nervous about and that we hear a lot about, and yet in my 15 years in Democrats Abroad, I really have never heard an actual case of someone being liable for taxes because they registered to vote. We do have a team that Will or Amanda from our global team might know more about, but we have a team of lawyers that are looking at tax codes in many of the states to try to find where is the link between voter registration and taxes. And at this point in time, it doesn't really exist. Now things are becoming more digital and they can start exchanging lists, but I think there are very few states where the state itself is looking at this. So it is a fear that people have that we have to deal with when you're helping to register voters. But if you want to know about a specific state, there is a team at the global level, and I'm looking around, is Will here? Will, you're here. Can you say more about this team, or what, if we've got now a place you can go to in the wiki or website? Pardon? That was accurate. So we are gathering more information, and if you have specific questions about Wisconsin, for instance, then you could either write to the global GOTV team, which is gotv@democratsabroad.org, run by a lawyer in Vancouver, but she's not really working on this project, but she could redirect you. Or write to whom, Will? With this, that's it. For specific questions then, as we're gathering, real information and putting it somewhere where people can access it. So it's GOTV, get out the vote, @democratsabroad.org.
I think we have time for one more question. All right.
I have one comment and two questions. The comment is about taxation. Germany and the United States have a double taxation treaty. So there are people who file taxes in the United States, both federal and state, and what you pay over here then will count toward over there, and vice versa. So there's absolutely nothing to fear because this usually does not involve additional taxes. And so I end up having this conversation fairly frequently with people. So if you're paying your taxes in the States or you're paying it here, it's not going to change your amount, even if you do now start submitting a tax form. The second thing is, I was wondering, and my two questions are, this list that Katie mentioned, a list of 13 or 14 states regarding registration, is there a possibility for us to get a list of those states here this weekend?
Yeah, we can make that happen.
And the second question I have is, I was asked specifically last week by a woman whose daughter would like to vote for the first time in this election, and she wants to vote in a primary, and the primary is happening, I think, in the very beginning of May. I forget which state she votes from. It might be Illinois because their daughter was applying to Purdue. And her daughter's birthday is April 29th or something, like April 30th, and the election is the 1st or the 2nd. And she wanted to know, is there a way for her to register now, because by the time her birthday hits and she's 18, then it would be too late to start the process, and how has that been addressed in the past?
Yeah, so I can speak specifically to Democrats Abroad and the procedural rules that we have set out. If she would like to register to vote with Democrats Abroad, you just have to be 18 by or on November 3rd, 2020. So true for all states. So
If she wants to vote in a primary in May.
She can vote in the primary.
Yeah,
She can vote
as long as she's going to
registered
be
before
18
November.
by the general election day, then she can vote in the primary as well.
Okay, so she just signs up even though she's 17?
Yes.
Okay, under vote from abroad.
Exactly. Great. All right. I think we can continue having conversations about if you have specific voter questions. Come and find one of us, and we're happy to talk about your question situation. As a last part of this session, I did just want to hand the floor over to Ron Schlunt, our treasurer, who's going to talk a little bit about our finances at the moment.
my report is on the